Hello, and welcome to my Melee Cleric guide. My name is Alacor. I've been streaming the game quite a lot over on Twitch, and I have a build spreadsheet pinned in the Cleric channel over on the official Discord. I'm currently at just over 8,600 combat rating on my Melee Cleric, and there's been a lot of questions regarding the spec, so I figured I'd put together a build guide to go over my setup and dive into the reasoning behind it all. If you just want the stat build and gear examples without all the extra explanation, you can go check out the spreadsheet linked in the description below. Otherwise, let's begin. So to start with, what exactly is a Melee Cleric? Clerics are a hybrid class that have an array of melee, healing, and caster abilities. Melee Clerics invest heavily into strength and other melee stats to bonk as hard as they can, pretty much. I just want to reiterate again, though, that Cleric is a hybrid class. You are very likely going to want to invest at least something into your caster side to fully take advantage of the class, which I'll touch on here in a moment and again in the gearing section later on. Now I'll discuss my stat investments and how you can fine-tune them to your taste. All the numbers I'm about to say are the amount I've invested, not the total stat amount. You can see how much you've invested by mousing over the purple plus icons next to each stat when spending XP. These are also the numbers shown on the spreadsheet. So for example, when you see 190 in the invested column for strength, my total base strength is not 190, but actually 200, which is denoted in the base total column. Now, on to the stat build. 1001 points in health. 1,000 is really the bare minimum I would spend in this, and I had a little bit of XP left over, so I just threw an extra point in there. But 1,100 or 1,200 would have been even better. I currently only have about 2688 max health in my setup, which feels pretty low, but you can address this with gearing too. 802 points in mana. Some people don't feel the need to invest much, if anything at all, into mana. Personally, I do feel like I run low on mana sometimes, so this was more of a personal choice. Spark of Light in particular is heavy on mana cost, and I weave it in between my melee combos pretty frequently because of its short cast time. If you think you don't need the mana, you can spend less here or nothing at all. But I would recommend at least putting something in there, and going to 800 points in it was pretty cheap to do. 190 points in strength. This scales your melee value, melee crit, and mace and shield skills. This will also bring you to 200 base strength and allows you to use up to crystal armor, locking you out of only diamond and titanium. This is a common point of contention for a lot of clerics, however. Going to 200 base strength requires roughly 200,000 XP, which is a large portion of your total XP. You only get 500,000. What does this do for us? As a melee cleric, you'll ideally want to use heavy armor to take advantage of its armor value, strength, courage, and secondary melee stats, such as weapon value, melee crit, and mace skill. The reason we go for 200 base strength is to access the most amount of armor we can for gear accessibility and max armor value. You will be in melee after all, so being able to soak some hits is very helpful and will aid in soloing difficult content later on, such as the Minotaur bosses, Tantarus, and I forget the other guy's name. It starts with an F. You can go for less, but you will likely find it a lot more difficult to gear up. Anecdotally, I've heard many clerics are having a hard time gearing up even at 200 strength. If you are able to secure the gear, you could invest less here and divert that XP elsewhere. Probably into melee crit, mace skill, or health dodge, or block rating for survivability. With the current state of things though, I highly recommend 200. 35 points in agility. This was mainly to help me cap fortitude, the PvP damage reduction stat. All primary attributes scale it up. But as I've reached higher levels of gear, this has quickly become a poor reason to do this, as you will completely blow past the cap as your gear improves. Agility also converts into melee crit, though it doesn't state it on the tooltip. I've been recommended 21 as the ideal number to invest into this, though I haven't looked into the reason much, as it's fairly cheap to invest into at this number, and I'm not looking to respec again for a while, but I believe it has to do with like how much it costs versus the melee crit stat itself, and just efficiency in terms of getting like melee crit there. You can invest less here and put this XP elsewhere if you wish. 100 points in willpower. This helps scale your resists, mace skill, heals, and your blessed shield, which you should use frequently while soloing. We are still a hybrid, even if we are focusing on bonking. It does also scale the holy damage portion of your smite ability as well. 85 points in intelligence. This helps scale your resists, heals, and your holy bolt and plague spells. Don't sleep on this. It actually scales your Spark of Light significantly, which again will be one of your most used heals. Plague you don't really use as much, but there are situations where you might want to use it. If you're approaching an enemy and you know you're on the move, you can use it while moving. You can get some free damage on them. Another time that you might want to use it is if all of your abilities are on cooldown. So that's your melee attack, harrowing strike, holy bolt, and smite. You can weave this in between your melee attack and harrowing strike combo. 70 points in courage. This scales your resists, mace, and shield skills and converts to melee crit. It also scales some of your abilities such as holy bolt and smite. Regeneration and meditate get no points. These are awful stats, honestly, to invest into, and they're quite expensive too. Don't do it. The number is divided by 10, and then that's what you get back for either health or mana, respectively, every 5 seconds, I believe. Yeah, I just would not spend in these. 500 points in melee crit. Divide this number by the level of your enemy, and that is your crit chance. We are bonking things, and we want to bonk harder sometimes, so this is one of our most important stats. You can invest more here if you decide to divert XP from somewhere else, but it does get expensive around this point. Ranged crit does nothing for us, and spell crit only affects holy bolt and the holy damage portion of smite. Not worth investing into. 50 points in dodge rating. You could probably put more in here and feel good about it if you want to. At the time I optimized my build, there was some questions about the value of dodge, but it seems to be a solid stat to invest into. 200 points in block rating. We want to bonk, but we don't want to get bonked. So this will let us actually put that shield to use. This is also a solid defensive stat to invest into. 125 points in each resist. These stats, in my opinion, are kind of awful. No matter how much you invest into it, it will only ever reduce damage taken by half and can always fail to do anything at all. In my opinion, I'd avoid getting this stat on gear ever. The points spent here were fairly cheap, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend not getting this. But you could probably spend less here and not feel bad about it, especially since these will scale from willpower, courage, and intelligence as well. 65 points in mace skill. This lowers your chance to be parried. Getting parried is a massive reduction to your damage, so we want this to be as high as it can be generally. It will also convert to bonus damage if your mace skill exceeds the enemy's skill. I think a lot of people tend to only go 50 points into this, but we're trying to bonk harder than them, and we don't want to get parried. 16 points in shield skill. Provides bonuses to block chance. Fairly cheap investment for a little bit of defensive value. 50 points in bartering. It costs 2,500 XP to hit 50 in this skill, and 10,000 XP to hit 100. You get an extra 7.5% discount on shops and repairs if you go to 100. I would rather just farm a little harder than spend that XP here, honestly. This is something you'll have to decide if you want to fully invest into or not, and if you do, you'll have to decide where you'll pull that XP from if so. 100 points in lockpicking. Highly recommended doing this, especially if you run solo. You want to be able to loot chests. Solo dungeons have guaranteed chests in them that need to be lockpicked. to be looted. For skills, we are maxing every skill except Blessing of Health, Desperate Prayer, Heal, Lesser Heal, Discipline, and Plague. Blessing of Health provides a small amount of health, and investing into it doesn't really change that for us. We're not investing in will significantly enough for this to be worth leveling up. Desperate Prayer is already quite good at a baseline. Investing into it only results in an extra 10% health and mana returned, which can be good in like PvP situations, I suppose, but for my purposes so far, it doesn't really feel worth the investment. Heal and Lesser Heal just kind of lose out to Greater Heal and Spark of Light in terms of usefulness. Lesser Heal recently got a buff to have the same cast time as Spark of Light. It heals quite a bit less, and it's more mana efficient, but considering we aren't investing heavily into willpower, I think it's best that we invest into the heals that can still be chunky despite our low investment. Discipline has the same reasoning as Desperate Prayer, really. It only gains 10% damage reduction with full investment, so again, I don't feel like it's necessary. But if you want this for PvP or something else, you'll have to decide where you want to pull points from in order to do that. Everything else is either our main attacks, scales well, or is very useful to have maxed. I want to highlight Satanic Madness in particular. When I first leveled, I did not level it up, and man, that was a massive mistake. It's a 5-second AoE fear at a baseline on a 30-second cooldown. Leveling it brings it up to 8 seconds, and it makes such a huge difference. It gives you a lot more breathing room in tough situations. In group dungeons, you'll have a second cleric with you as a healer guaranteed, and you will be able to chain 2 fears together on mobs, keeping an entire group CC'd for 16 seconds out of your 30-second cooldown. Now, moving on to gear. You'll want to focus on getting heavy armor for all of your armor slots. Ideally, as heavy as you are able to wear, because you'll get more armor value for free, allowing you to cap it easier. All armor pieces should be strength and courage, which are indicated by the lion and elephant affixes in the names. You'll want a relevant offstat such as melee crit, weapon value, mace skill, or a defensive stat as needed such as armor value, block or dodge rating, or health and mana. For accessories, I would highly recommend tri-stat accessories. In my opinion, the best option would be strength, intelligence, and willpower, but strength, willpower, and courage, or strength, intelligence, and courage are also good. If you can't get these, I would recommend getting strength with either willpower or intelligence, and one of the relevant offensive or defensive stats I mentioned before. For shields, I'm currently running a willpower intelligence shield with armor value on it to increase my ability to solo stuff. But if you want to maximize your DPS in groups, you could go for a strength courage shield with a relevant secondary stat. I'll likely pick up one of these at some point in the future as a situational swap myself. For weapons, it can be very hard to find maces at all, so don't feel bad if you need to take something suboptimal. I would prioritize getting the highest weapon value weapons you can possibly find with strength on them. Weapons have a high stat budget on them, so you'll want to try to get a strength mace. When it comes to godly weapons, this seems fairly rare, so just be aware. That's why at the time of this video, I'm currently rocking a godly mace that has meditate as a third stat on it, which is very suboptimal. But again, the ideal third stat is something like melee crit, mace skill, weapon value, or a solid defensive stat like armor value, block rating, dodge rating, or health and mana. For your combat rotation, you'll want to prioritize using Harrowing Strike coupled with your basic melee attack on cooldown. You'll want to consider saving your Holy Bolt or Smite to use as an interrupt if it's needed, but if it's not, you can use these on cooldown in between your Harrowing Strike and basic attack combos. Holy Bolt's cast time is short enough to allow you to weave it in without clipping them, as is Spark of Light. In tougher fights, you'll often find yourself weaving Spark of Light or a Blessed Shield plus Rejuvenation combo in between instead of your filler DPS skills. if Smite and Holy Bolt are on cooldown and you don't need to heal, use Plague. Otherwise, you're not going to want to use Plague unless maybe like you find yourself at range against an enemy, and at that point you have nothing else to use, so you can just do it then. Lastly, I've said it a couple of times during the video, but Cleric is a hybrid class that exists on a wide spectrum. There are many different ways you can build your Cleric, and this is just my preference. I lean heavily into the strength aspect of it, but I've still made choices to improve healing, tankiness, and such for quality of life. There are times where it may even be required. You can focus entirely on DPS stats and neglect everything else, but then find yourself eating a greater fireball and outright dying because you couldn't survive it. With all that said, I will leave you with a snippet from one of my live streams featuring one of my runs of the Undercourse solo dungeon, so you can see how it plays and more specifically how I play it. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope it helped you out. I'm live almost every day on Twitch, so feel free to find my channel in the description of the video below and give me a follow over there, or if you ever want to come hang out and ask questions. And finally, if you want to, feel free to drop a like on the video. It would help me out a ton, as this is one of my first videos. Until next time, lates. I'll pay more for repairs, fuck it. I'm sitting on so much gold because I don't want to deal with trading. Yeah, it's been a lot. I started using the trade website today because I didn't want to deal with it this whole time, but I'm glad I finally did because I've already made like a bunch, and like I've cleared up space in my stash from shit that I probably was gonna vendor. Hear that? Ooh, fucking slapped him a little bit. Uh-oh. Alright, we got a game. We got a... Shit. Damage reduction. Uh-oh. I might have fucked up. Greater Flame? Alright, we interrupted it. Desperate Prayer. Here. Alright, we're good. Holy crap. It's kind of spooky when when that happens. I still gotta pay attention, my health is low, what the fuck? Keep healing. Can I get some crits? There we go, Jesus Christ. Holy crap. That was a clusterfuck. The bartering and trading seems like the part I'll waste the most time on. It was 100 times worse before the stat changes. Or before the chat changes, yeah. Yeah, not using the trade website though, and then dealing with the chat now also sucks though, because you can only... I think you can only try to sell one thing at a time, right? You have a stash full of shit, and then nobody wants to buy the one thing that you do link because nobody can see anything in the fucking chat. There was shit that I had advertised for a long time in all chat that when I finally just posted it on the trade website, like I sold it like very quickly. I've played some PoE 1 and a decent bit of PoE 2. PoE 2 obviously like doesn't really have this problem, but PoE 1 like was very similar to this. Well, I guess PoE 2 is actually kind of like this, but it's just integrated into the game, kind of. They have like their own official like trade website, and then it like links into the game or whatever, I think. But yeah, the PoE 1 method, like I didn't like it. I didn't like it. A fun challenge would be to start with a low value item and keep trading up until you get like... Sounds like a TikTok video. I collect Pokemon cards, by the way. Also some Magic. But that's more for playing. I collect Pokemon cards, and every now and then I'll see like a fucking short pop up on my YouTube recommended. And it'll be something like that. Like a guy goes to a convention and then he trades his way up to like a fucking $300 card from like a $1 card. And I'm like, fuck you. Bullshit. Shit's fake as shit. These guys did no damage to me. I didn't fear them or anything. I just tanked them. It's that armor. That armor going to work. This game is way more addicting than I thought it would be. It's really fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. I know the graphics aren't for everyone, but I kind of love them. Gotta drop some Riz to make it work. That's not how trading shit like that works, though. You don't trade up. Like, literally everybody gives you, like, a percentage of the value of whatever you have. Unless you're talking about... Are you talking about trying to gaslight them into thinking that the card is in, like, better condition than it is? Is that what you're doing? You're gonna be gaslighting people out here? Excited for the new content he has lined up? Yeah, I haven't even done any of the group content. I've just been doing all solo shit so far. I hope that after he adds the new group dungeon, I hope he does some new solo shit too. I really like that he has solo content in the game. I hope that continues. I love the old school graphics. Yeah, same. Reminds me of Ultima Online or like Diablo 2 zoomed out. I'd be scamming Alicorp, and I would never scam anyone. I'm gonna have to consult Neil on this. Love the graphics since playing Exiled Kingdoms. Exiled Kingdoms. Basilius, appreciate the follow, man. Exiled Kingdoms. Oh, does this game use the same assets? Is this the same assets or no? Or is it just in like the same style? The walls look the same. Yeah, that's the same walls. Yeah. That's the same assets. Yeah, I believe they're the same, yeah. Diablo 2, miss those days, yeah. You know, I never gave the remaster like a proper playthrough. I played a little bit of the remaster, but I never went all the way through to endgame or anything. I fucking slapped this guy's dick off. He got crit to shit. Only thing I didn't like is they fixed Blessed Hammers. What'd they do to it? They don't go through walls anymore? That's a huge change. That's like a huge nerf too, I'm sure. There's a lot of corridors in that game. Are Hammerdins like fucked now? Apparently that was a glitch all along. Why would they fix it though? The game's been out for like 25 years. Man, fucking Blizzard. I swear to God, why do they do shit like that? Oh God. That's crazy. Just fucking alienate a portion of your player base. Remember that maggot layer? Hammerdin is useless, yeah. Hi, how did you build your character? Welcome, Rishos. Exclamation point build. You can click that link right there. Those are the stats that I've invested. Not the base stat totals, but if you mouse over the plus signs, it says you've invested 190 points, so 190 points brought me to 200, right? So all the numbers in there are the invested numbers. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Let's go in. Come on, give me some good loot. Gonna fear immune the first One. Oh, I almost missed that. I almost missed that. Smite that. Okay. Here. Gonna heal up. Barrier. Rejuve. Alright, then we kill him. Run away. Wow, he didn't charge me, actually. That's crazy.